This is Ron Mitchell with Blood Horse Magazine. Over the past couple of years, one of our most popular features has been training the offspring of stallions. As part of this series, we interview trainers who have had the progeny of some of America's top stallions in their barn, just to find out what those horses would like to train. The latest segment in this series, which appeared in the January 30th issue of the Blood Horse, was on Street Cry, this very successful stallion who stands at Darley near Lexington. Today we are at Darley with Ollie Tate, who's going to discuss a little bit about Street Cry's career as a stallion.
He was a terrifically talented racehorse. He raced for Owen Harty in the ownership of Godolphin as a 2-year-old, and he raced 5 times and was placed in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. So I guess he showed his talent early on. He was a very precocious horse. He went on as a 3-year-old and had an interrupted preparation as a 3-year-old, won the UAE Guineas in Dubai early in the year, and then came back, and obviously it was as a 4-year-old that, that was his marquee year when he won the Dubai World Cup, and then came to Churchill Downs and won the Stephen Foster. So he was a horse right out of the top drawer. I think if he hadn't had an interrupted preparation as a 3-year-old, he could have been a real force to be reckoned with in the Triple Crown races in America, but that wasn't to be. But happily he went on and showed what a terrifically talented horse he was as a 4-year-old. Street Cry was an interesting horse. He was his mother won the Irish Oaks. I think his first 3 dams all were 2-year-old stakes winners, and his mother is by Troy, who was a stamina influence. But then she visited Machiavellian, and the product of that mating was Street Cry. And for us, he's a very important horse in where he's come from, in that he was a homebred by Darley. He raced for Godolphin, then he's ended up being a successful stallion here at Darley, back at Darley. So I guess he embodies everything that we as an organisation are trying to achieve for Sheikh Mohammed in what we do. Machiavellian was probably a horse who brought out the great qualities of the mares that he covered. He was a terrific stallion, but a lot of the time the progeny through to the mare, or through to the great qualities of the mare, and so therefore he was very versatile. He got top sprinters and he got great stayers as well. Street Cry was out of an Irish Oaks winner, so that's probably where the stamina came from. He was a good horse over 2 turns, and hence won the Dubai World Cup and also the Stephen Foster. So I think Machiavellian, whilst not being a stallion that stood in America and therefore may have been a little foreign to American breeders, he was by Mr. Prospector, which is obviously a very important influence. And he was a very good sire, and it's great to see his legacy living on through Street Cry.
And of course, Street Cry came to stud here, as you said. How well was he received? He was
supported well, but it wasn't. They didn't fly off the shelf, to use a retail term. I think it was because his exposure to American breeders had been as a 2-year-old. When he was placed in a number of good races but didn't win a big one, and then when he won the Stephen Foster as a 4-year-old. Being by Machiavellian, he was not an American influence. His pedigree is a turf pedigree, even though he was a dirt performer himself. So he was well supported in the early years, but he wasn't the most popular stallion as an unproven horse that we've ever stood. But happily, he was still given a good opportunity by the breeders, and he did the job very early on in his career. What he brings to his offspring is that he as a racehorse had a great attitude. He was a very easy horse to train. I think above all else, the people who train the progeny of Street Cry say they're easy horses to train. They're tough, and they're willing, and they're genuine. What is interesting also is that the diversity of his good offspring. Street Boss, of course, who was a wonderful sprinter. He's such a great-looking horse, great quality, very correct, and he's had a Melbourne Cup winner in Shocking. He's had a Kentucky Derby winner. He's had Zenyatta, who's won a Breeders' Cup Classic and had so much success in California. So he gets them over all distances and all surfaces, and that's incredibly exciting for us in this day of global racing, where horses do need to run on different surfaces. I think his progeny show incredible acceleration. Street Sense and Zenyatta, his 2 most prominent offspring, incredibly effective in the last quarter mile of a race, blow the opposition away. So I think he's imparted that to them, but I think overall probably they've got great attitudes, and also they've got good constitution. Street Cry himself is a big, strong horse. he's not necessarily a pretty horse, but he's a big, strong horse, and I think he gives his progeny a great constitution, and that coupled with their attitudes mean that they're easy horses to train, but then most importantly he gives them brilliance. He hasn't been at stud for particularly long. His eldest progeny are now 6. His Zenyatta was from his first crop and she's still racing, so it's early days. I guess like all farms we want to stand good racehorses by champion stallions, and we're in a lucky, fortunate position that we've got one of the very best stallions here, and of course we'll be looking for more of his sons in the years to come.